This is Red Moon Role-Playing.
Masks of Nyarlathotep, Chapter 1. Where last we left our investigators, they were in the wilderness of Peru. They had discovered a pyramid long lost, the home of the Cariceri, a cursed breed of entity serving a great old one. Spawned when conquistadors meddled with the ancient resting place of a fallen god. Armed with a slab of gold to seal in the great old one, our investigators intrepidly entered the pyramid, some of them, while others fended off the Cariceri. And while it was a near-death and near-sanity-losing experience, somehow, despite all odds, our characters pulled their way through. Meline Hopper, Felix Bauer, Shelby Shattuck, all of them survived. Along with them was Jackson Elias, under the pseudonym of Jesse Hughes, at least until he got to know them better, this scholar of occultism, of cult-like entities and organizations, author of a renowned book in the occult field known as The Black Power, published in 1921. He had befriended them and spent several months in the southern Andes before meeting up with them in Lima, accompanying them to the pyramid, and seeing off this vile evil. But now time has passed. Time has moved on. No longer are our characters in Peru. There is nothing there for them now. They have maybe returned home, or perhaps to other cities. We are looking a year and a half later. We were in 1923. We are now in the very early weeks of 1925. And what I would like to ask of each of you, and I'll be going from player to player, character to character, is how they have spent their time, how they have recovered from what they witnessed, what they endured, whether they chronicled it, whether they ran away from the truth, or whether they embraced it. We're going to start with the physically maimed Meline Hopper, who very nearly lost her life and came close enough to losing her leg after plummeting into the pyramid and shattering the bone. Meline, what does the beginning of 1925 look like for you, and what have the previous year and a half held?
That is such a great question, Keeper. Given the events that happen in Peru, an experience like that shattered me physically. On some levels, psychologically, I have to metabolize that things are not as I originally believed them to be. I have to integrate certain experiences as real, and there are just certain things that happen in Peru that I'm not going to be able to run away from. And then there's also the physical fact that I can't run away from anything. So I believe probably the first 6 months, they say when you're dealing with certain types of trauma, you have to sit through it. That's typically a choice. I wasn't really afforded that choice. I think for the very first 6 months following that event, I stayed in Peru. I sat with the things that I didn't understand. I sat with the feelings that I couldn't quite interpret. And I had to sit because I almost lost my leg. I'm still limping now. The doctor said I should be better by the end of a year. I am better, but it took some time before I could walk again. It took some time before I could run again. It took some time for me to realize that everything that happened to me, to happen to us in Peru, was now a constant reminder of pains in my leg, a limp. It's one of those things you can't really escape from, you know? Every time I put on a dress and I have to restabilize myself, it reminds me of the fall. First 6 months were in Peru. I needed to heal.
Tell me, Bridgett, would Meline have remained in the rural environs, in the village she had encountered on the way to the pyramid, or would, for the sake of her physical rehabilitation, have returned to Lima?
I am going to have to say, with the affinity that I picked up with the lake, Puno, I'm actually going to say I stay there for that recovery. That feels more authentic to the experience that Meline typically looks for.
Then tell me further. When you return to the village, and we will get to how long your companions stayed based on what Maciej and Eddy say, but assuming you remained in that village for 6 months or thereabouts, how open were you with the people there of what you had encountered in the pyramid? Not every single person in this village, well, more of a town, a collection of villages, was cognizant of the threats. Yes, there were certainly some wise elders, some people of a more spiritual bent or learned in occult nature who had heard of the Carry or knew of the pyramid, but the vast majority did not. So, is it your habit of dining out on this? Are you keeping it close to your chest? Are you basically remaining a recluse? Or are you trying to assimilate?
No, assimilation feels most authentic. I also have an intimate understanding that some knowledge shouldn't be shared with everyone, but those who know enough need to be warned or need to understand not to repeat certain mistakes. So was it Naira? Was that the wise woman that we met with? It'd be one of those situations where Naira and those like her would get a full debriefing of everything that we experienced in utter transparency. Those that know, or had encountered the Carry that knew who to ask, I would tell them those stories. But I'm not looking to monetize this. I'm not looking to become, there's that American that has funny stories about what happened into a pyramid. No, but those who know who to ask, those who quote unquote, I determine that deserve the knowledge, I'll share.
Well, you get a little something mechanically here, Bridgett. Meline gains 25 in Spanish and 15 in Quechua. But if you are living in the rural environs of Peru, there aren't that many people out here that speak English. There are some, sure, and those are probably the people you speak to most of all. But to even operate in a place like this, you're going to have to start learning the language, and it's something of a hothouse lesson. You can't really slack off when you're in physical pain, and there are certain things you need to, demand. For those first couple of months, the people see you as something of a burden.
That's fair.
You are that foreign woman who has arrived here, passed through town, has returned with an injury, and is now sometimes waking up in the night shrieking, sometimes calling out for help because she's fallen over. Basically making something of a demanding nuisance of yourself, and it's hard to not to resent how much of a nuisance they see you as. It's not compassion. That's not how they treat you. They see you as an interloper, a demanding interloper. But that cools. And by the 3rd month, people are warming to you. And it's because of what you've just described, the fact that you are passing on to the people who do know what occurred in the pyramid. It's not that the people of Puno see you as a hero. Certainly not at first. But when it becomes apparent that the Carry, these predators that no one could really define, they're just absent now. The shepherds can now walk their flocks without fear of, the sheep being drained of all fat, let alone their own bodies. The nights are no longer quite as hazardous as they used to be. No one travels to the site of the pyramid, but those predators that you claim to have encountered, and you claim that some of your companions assisted in the destruction of them, they just are not there anymore. And so, tale starts to spread. By month 4, it's fairly embedded in the people's minds. You are one of the individuals responsible for cleaning up the wilderness, for ensuring that these monsters are no longer there to hound their children and their elderly and their solitary travellers. Maybe not a hero, as I say, but someone to be received warmly And every now and then, embarrassing as it might be, you are left small gifts, or neighbours start bringing you baked goods or fresh food. It was a cold start, Madeline, but slowly but surely, you're welcomed into the community of Puno.
Stunning.
For the first few months, before everything really starts becoming welcoming, Jackson actually remains with you. He's reluctant to leave you here by yourself, with your injury. But there comes a time, 3 months in, that he's alone with you, sat beside your bed, and he stretches his legs and arms out in front of him, lifting his legs up from the ground, and he lets out an enormous sigh. You know it's the sound he makes whenever he's about to go out for a long walk. And then he lets his legs drop to the floor again. His hands rest on his lap, and he looks at you. I think I need to get back to America, Maddie.
I knew this conversation was coming. And even though I've been bracing for it, it still hurts when it lands. But I knew this conversation was coming. I have a children's book of some sort in Spanish that's probably been degraded, run through, and beat to hell, probably missing 7 out of the total of 12 pages that it should. But it's been helping me, understand the language. And I look up to Jackson. I know. It's time. I appreciate you staying as long as you have. But things are getting better. I'll be standing in a month or so. And look, I've gone from the nuisance of town to, what is that? Some type of dried fruit?
God, I hope so, he says, and he laughs. I'm not sure that that's what they were going to deliver the first few weeks. I really need to thank you, Maddie. And he taps the journal that he's been writing in pretty feverishly since getting back from the pyramid. I've decided I'm going to call it The Hungry Dead. Your ideas, your way of making the things we encountered sound more, well, I suppose mundane. It might make this book sell, and those people who know what to look for will be able to see between the lines and realise that what we're talking about here is truth. If I can get this to my publisher at Prospero House, back in your old stomping grounds, New York, well, I'm not saying I'm leaving here for the fame. This isn't the kind of book that will ever do that. But it means other people will know. It means that if there are other groups like this out there, and there are other people like us out there who are looking for groups like that, they might know what to look for. They might know how to combat them. They might just take inspiration or solace from the fact that others have encountered these things and survived.
I cross my arms over my chest as he's speaking, and I look to him, and that concern is populating in my eyes. Yes, but Jackson, it'll also put you on a lot of radars for information that you possess, experiences that you've had. Won't you be inviting the scrutiny of those that you should probably be avoiding as well? Where do you draw that line in balance?
When he laughs, it's not dismissing you. He's not being condescending. It's just something that he has considered a lot. I wrote my first book. I don't think I've ever told you this. My first published book. It was in 1910. Jonah Kensington. He came to me with the offer to publish it. An excellent man. That book was Skulls Along the River. I was talking about headhunter cults in the Amazon basin. So I suppose, in relative terms, closer to where we are now than back when I was in New York. And then, 2 years later, Masters of the Black Arts. Various surveys compiled detailing sorcerous cults throughout history, and then The Way of Terror in 1913 and The Smoking Heart in 1915. And I'm not saying all of this to impress or to cow or to shut you up. what I'm trying to say is, this is my calling. This is what I do. I need to write these books. I've been doing it now for close to 15 years, and they may not make me a millionaire, and they may put a target on my head. But if I'm not going to write these things... And he leaves it hanging.
I bite into my bottom lip and I nod as my gaze drops down, because I also understand. That doesn't mean that I like it, but I also understand. Jackson, when you get back to New York, what's the first thing you're going to eat? I didn't think I'd miss the cuisine in New York as much as I have these last 6 months.
Oh boy. What will I eat in New York?
Mm-hmm.
And he frowns. You know, I know this fantastic bakery. They do bagels, and they load them so thick with every kind of meat, more vegetables that you can chew. It's almost like the perfect combination of protein and fiber. It feels like you're going to have a heart attack when you're swallowing it, and then, not to get scatological about it, Meline, but it passes right through you. You hardly even notice the weight. But while you're eating it, while you're chewing it, it is like an explosion of flavour in your mouth. There's this old couple that run the place. I think they've been there since the late 19th century. That's where I'm going to stop by. But that's a good question. What about you? You are going to come home, aren't you?
I think for a moment, because home is such an interesting word for Meline. Yes, when I'm able, I'll return to New York. It's where I go to recharge. I think a pie. A pie with... And then instead of going through the ingredients that I would want on this pizza, I am going to attempt to start going through the ingredients in Spanish. Just for the practice, just for the conversational approach for it. I've got cheese down. I haven't quite figured out the word for pepperoni. Jackson can probably help me with that. Ham I have down and things of that nature. And I'm going to start trying to finish the continuation of something joyous, something that inspires hope, something that is grounding in a new language that I have been learning as quickly as I can. It's a big springboard away from help. It hurts. I've soiled myself. I can't eat this. More medicine. It hurts. It's much more comforting and forward-facing to try a new language with the things that I'm looking forward to versus the things that I'm suffering through.
He seems genuinely pleased to hear you do it. And yeah, there's a childish element to you having to recite a shopping list in Spanish, but he seems pleased, proud, but reassured. And he says to you, I don't think you're going to have any difficulty being here without me. Soon you'll be ordering them around and they won't complain.
Maybe. But no, you're right. You're overdue to get home. You have a vision to chase, and I'll be okay here. I'll write. And I'll let you know when I'm inbound to New York. Have you heard from the other boys? And that's something she's been doing almost from an affectionate level.
That question, have you heard from the other boys, is where we will pass on to one of the other boys. Felix, the shocks you took to your system while at the pyramid were perhaps more mental than physical. You witnessed some things, did some things. You were sure that you were going to die. And somehow you came through it. Yet again, a survivor of a war. What did the first months following your return from the pyramid look like? Did you hang around Puno? Did you get the hell out of Peru without goodbyes? Did you stop by Lima?
I think I felt a certain sense of responsibility towards the rest of the team. Probably for the first week or so at the very least. I would have supported Meline and Jackson, but, well, the thing is, I really don't have a lot of money, and we didn't really get paid for this expedition at the end of the day, did we?
Sadly not. Something unfortunate happened to the expedition leader.
And as a result, well, I do need to get back to working. But it was a feeling, having left the pyramid and having been able to, well, not quite vanquish, but I mean, I didn't die. It was exhilarating in a way. Just like being in combat could be, when you weren't seeing your brothers die all around you, of course. It's a feeling of being alive that you can't get anywhere else. And the fact that I was able to walk out of that situation with my life and my mind still intact, there's a kind of high that I got from that. And I think it changed my outlook on life quite a lot. I was in some ways looking forward to death, looking forward to dying for a good cause. But perhaps now I've actually earned a shot at life. I just need to make some money and I can put this thing back together. I can do Siegfried proud. I can make sure that he can feel good about his brother. I can live the life that he never got to have. But first, work.
Does that take you back to Germany?
I think that Germany is a place that is... I think that my future is here in America, though. I speak the language, and there's so many opportunities here. And I read in the papers that, well, things over there are always chaotic in one way or another. Although I suppose it's getting more and more stable. That's good. It's somehow coming together. But no, I think I've remained in South America, traveling between the different Spanish-speaking countries, trying to, get work. I might even have caught up with Hugo if he was still around. See if we could maybe work together. And I mean, we're both old soldiers. There's a need for our skills everywhere in this continent.
If you're remaining in South America, you can take 25% in Spanish and 15% in Portuguese. You pick up the language very well. After spending several more months there, you don't remain in Puno, just long enough to say your goodbyes, but then it's back to the urban environments, hiring yourself out as bodyguard, playing the role of security for this agency or company or that. It's actually not by design that you run into Corporal Metzger or Hugo again. You don't meet him in Lima. In fact, it's entirely serendipitous, you could say, by coincidence, and yet a happy coincidence, that while you are in Mexico City briefly, probably the farthest north you travel before delving back into South America, that you are told that you're sharing a hotel with another German. And that's when you see him. And this is 6 months on. He's a little more whiskery now. Looks a little older around the eyes, which is strange because, well, not that he doesn't have the excuse, but he didn't venture out into the wilderness with you. Just looks like he's fallen on hard times, somewhat. Something of note, Felix. Ever since your encounter at the pyramid, no more voices, no more ghosts, no more brother whispering in your ear. Just gone. So you see Hugo there at the bar. He hasn't noticed you, or if he has, he doesn't recognise you.
Well, seeing a familiar face, that's a happy moment. So yeah, I'll move up and sit down next to him. Hugo Metzger?
He looks at you sleepily. Eyes narrow, then widen.
It's Felix Bauer. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, Felix. I remember you. From Lima. You're part of the expedition. The Larkin expedition.
Yeah, that was quite something. Larkin, something ended up happening to him, right?
We all thought Isabella and I, we thought that you and the others had been abducted or killed, or you just disappeared, and then they found... And his eyes narrow again. Yeah, something odd happened to Augustus Larkin. What did you know about that, Felix?
And this is, of course, now a important question to answer here. How open is Felix about what actually happened? The crazy stories that he could tell. Would Hugo believe them? Or not? He really wouldn't have any reason to believe them. I think what the Felix decides to do is to say what Hugo is expecting to hear. To come up with an explanation that is feasible and that allows both of them to just move on with their lives. Yeah, I mean, it must have been some kind of scam, I suppose. No, we, seeing as how things weren't coming together, I ended up just going, and I think Meline and Shelby did the same too. Jackson, we just decided that it wasn't worth it.
He takes a drink. I try not to have hard feelings after the war. There are too many serious grievances in the world to worry about rudeness, but... And then he turns on his bar stool, slams his tequila down. You and all of them just left? You just fled Lima because it was a scam, and you left me? You left Professor Melquiades in the hotel without telling us? We were left swinging in the wind. Felix, I poured all of the money that I had into traveling to Peru, with the promise that it would yield great treasures or rewards, something I could take home so that I would not be caught in... And with everyone gone, and with Larkin dead, and Mendoza disappeared, what was I to do? I was practically destitute, and I told Isabella, no, I will be fine, I will find work, and she returned to Spain, but how could you do that? We were comrades, we fought together, maybe not on the same line, maybe I was shooting at British while you were shooting at French, but we fought and died together, and you just abandoned me in Lima?
Yeah, now that you're right. That was a horrible thing for me to do. I'm really sorry, Hugo, especially if you ended up stuck without any money left. But look, let me make it up to you somehow. I mean, you couldn't trust me then, but maybe you can trust me now. Maybe we can work together. We can find work together. We can work as a team. You have no reason to trust me, I know that. But give me a chance. Earn your trust back. What have you got to lose?
At this stage, nothing. I do not need to hesitate. I will take your offer, Felix, but it is not because I trust you or because I like you. It is because I have nothing else. I am practically homeless. And you can smell on his breath that he is homeless. If there is a place you wish for me to shoot, you point. If there is someone you want me to guard, I will guard them. I will wash myself up. I will get myself clean. I will make myself upright and professional again.
Well, that's really good.
But if you do this to me again, if you turn your back on me again, if you abandon me again, I know this is not exactly the first step towards a long-standing friendship, but I am telling you, if you do this to me again, I will not be happy.
No, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. And the good thing is that, well, we won't have to experience that. Because we're going to be working together. And I'm going to earn your trust back. And I have some good opportunities lined up, actually. Turns out there's a lot of people who need guarding. And a lot of work for men like us. So, yeah. We can have another couple of drinks tonight. And then tomorrow we get cleaned up. And we head off to work. And we start building a future here, huh?
I have drank enough over the last however many months it's been. I do not need more drinks tonight. I need a bath and I need a sleep, and in the morning I will try again.
Well, then I'll make sure that we both have a place to stay. And, I mean, obviously I'm not exactly in the best situation financially either. I tend to not have a lot of money. When I get money, I tend to end up drinking it or in other ways losing it. But I have enough for a room for the both of us, at least. Separate rooms, of course. And yeah, this is the start of a great friendship, I hope.
He nods. He doesn't raise a drink and toast because he has already downed his. Instead, he stands, wobbles. You're not sure how much of this conversation he will remember acutely, but you can always have it again in the morning. It's very likely that the worst of the confrontation is over. You don't think you're going to wake up in the night to find him strangling you, but there's always the possibility, and on some level you'd probably deserve it. But for the time being, you have a professional colleague, an accomplice in your actions in Central and South America. Hugo Metzger remains a part of your life. And so for the next year or so, indeed, the two of you do run security. You do bodyguard. Sometimes you're protecting places, more often you're protecting people. There's something striking, something that stands out, something that builds to your reputation and enables you to access places some others can't by the nature of you both being a pair of Germans in South America. There, you stand out among the populace, both in terms of language and accents, but also physicality, your appearance. It's a strange thing to be able to advertise yourself with, but any way to get ahead in this industry. But while you're doing that, let's find out what Shelby Shattuck's been up to. Shelby, of all of the characters, all of the investigators who delved into the pyramid, in some ways you're the one who got off, well, almost most cleanly. You were certainly running low on luck. As far as the gods were concerned, and the fates, you were a hair's breadth away from termination. But your physicality, your sanity, your health and well-being, you managed to hold it together. And in the end, you were able to help Madeline escape the pyramid, even potentially risking yourself to do so. What does the future hold for Shelby Shattuck the next year and a half before January 1925 date? And what's his relationship with Rupert Carruthers? He's the friend you came out here with, and you can be gratified to see that he did survive the journey when he fled from the pyramid.
At first, my focus is making sure that Madeline gets somewhere safe. A lot of the experience with the pyramid was so driven by adrenaline, by chaos, by danger, that I really just want to make sure that she's okay, because I knew she was a threat. Felix can take care of himself. Jackson clearly is a man who's more knowledgeable about these things, but she suffered the most, and I feel, as a gentleman, that, if nothing else, I should make sure that she arrives to a place where she is safe. So once we get back to the village, I then make sure that Rupert is safe. And once he is, I don't talk to him for a night, maybe two, because he did abandon me when I needed help. Jackson had to step in to help. But after a day or two, I reached back out to Rupert, and I apologize for my coldness.
Oh, Shelby, he has been maintaining a distance. He knows the signs. He hasn't constantly hounded you, apologizing. Far from it. While it isn't coldness on his part, it's fear. It's fear of what you might say if he broached the conversation. So the fact that you opened up and led with an apology makes him blush beet red, which is a colour he's swiftly become due to the heat. But even more so when you apologise. Shelby, I don't accept your apology. I was scared, and I played through my head, both when I was there hiding in a valley, as if that could afford me any protection, and back here in this town of village of towns, or whatever it is. I was thinking, Rupert, you had no control. Your legs just took you away, and you just lost your mind. But that isn't true. I knew that I was running. I knew that I could have turned back. I could have found it in myself to come back, but I chose to hide instead. And I am ashamed of that. And I am so sorry. I really am so sorry, not just to you, but to the others. It's not my finest moment.
It wasn't any of our finest moments. How could we have anticipated that monstrosity, that terrifying, horrifying creature? The creatures that came after us, we learned about them, we experienced them, but it wasn't the same. And you had no weapons. It was unfair of me to assume and to expect you to kill yourself over me. That was selfish of me.
Let's stop feeling sorry for ourselves. I think it doesn't become gentlemen like us, Shelby. I think we should put this behind us, forget it ever happened, and move on as if everything is fine. That sounds like the healthiest thing to do.
Bottle it up, perhaps with another bottle.
Now that sounds like a top-hole idea, although I'm not sure that there's a huge range of gins here in Puno. I think we should probably get back to the city once Miss Hopper is situated.
Agreed.
It seems she is insisting on staying here.
Well, we'll stay here for a time. We will rough it. We are made of sterner stuff. And then after things settle down, and once Madeline's ready to move on to Lima, I'll go with her. Again, making sure she's okay. Sometimes talking about what happens, but only if she's ready. But as soon as we start making the trip, I realize I can't stay in Lima. Because every time I walk around the streets there, my eye is drawn back to that alleyway where a man was shot in cold blood. And I understand why it happens. I don't even blame Felix. But it doesn't change the fact that a man was shot in cold blood. So, after a few days, I will encourage Rupert's to do two things. One, to book us passage back to England. And two, to pay off the tobacconists that we left behind.
Rupert is only too relieved to finally get the message that you're ready to return home after about 7 months in South America. If you stayed in Puno with Meline for as long as she was there, that was a good 6 months. Then finally taking her with you to Lima. Yeah, you were there almost close to a year by the time you depart. Rupert hasn't had an utterly miserable time of it. You've seen what a flexible man he can be. He can bounce back from pretty much anything. Not to mention he has picked up what he has called his favourite Batman as a young Peruvian gentleman by the name of Arturo, who is now spending a lot of time with Rupert. And he says to you, I'm so looking forward to getting home. I intend to show Arturo the Cotswolds.
That sounds lovely.
Arturo is there, just over his shoulder, nodding and smiling. You know, I think even after all this time together, he doesn't speak much of a lick of English, but I think that's probably for the best. So, what I've discovered after all this time, Shelby, is Spanish is a beautiful language, a language of love, and our language is so coarse and brutal in comparison. When we get home, I may just endeavour to speak Spanish whenever I'm, well, I was about to say not at work, but that would basically mean always.
How very continental of you.
Well, I like to think so. I'm suspecting it's the language of the future. But I've booked our passage. We'll be able to catch a train to Mexico, and then it will be a ship all the way from Mexico back to good old Blighty.
Sounds lovely.
Does, doesn't it? Oh, I see you picked up that pipe.
Yes, I felt it was perhaps time.
Is this... I remember now. You were supposed to be buying me some tobacco. That was months ago now. Did you...
I bought you the tobacco. You smoked it already.
Oh, well, fair enough. And so our investigators, in the form of Shelby and Rupert and the newly enlisted Arturo, sail on back to Britain. And all three of you, Meline, Felix and Shelby, would the intention be that after that 6 or 7 months when you're all in different parts of the world, that you would maintain correspondence with each other? That you would send the occasional telegram or wire?
Having shared the experiences that we have shared, those are the kinds of things that's, you never forget about that, right? So Felix has certainly been trying to keep in touch with them, if they've wanted to keep in touch with him after, what they saw him do.
Absolutely.
I'm very intentional about maintaining contact. I write probably a letter a month to each of them.
Yeah, about the same.
And in the course of this correspondence, do you ever discuss the truth of what you encountered, or is it more just a catching up, finding out where in the world you are, how's your health?
I think Felix has been trying to not quite forget, but rationalize the whole thing. The world is so much easier to accept and understand when you don't have to make what we saw fit into all that. It can actually be the way that I thought that it was. The world can work in the way that it was supposed to work. And all these awful things that I've seen, the war and what I saw inside the pyramid, those things, they were real, obviously, but not at the same time. I put them away in a corner in my mind, and I shut the door there. And I hope I never have to open that door again. So I don't mention it.
How about you, Madeline?
I'll say 85% of my correspondences are stories. Typically funny stories, or humiliating stories, or local updates on how I'm getting on with the local population, or stories from my adventures abroad. Like, I tell them about the pizza that I'm most looking forward to having when I get back to New York, those type of stories, because I am also going to disassociate from the events of that pyramid. I don't need to have a pen in my hand scribing on the paper the way that I felt when a metal instrument was shoved up my nose. I don't need to revisit a pit full of bodies. None of us do. So if I'm going to be a source of outreach, I want the same way the pain in my leg is a reminder of what we went through. I know that every letter that arrives at either of their doors is a reminder of what we went through. So my entire intention is to make sure every correspondence that they see with my name at the top of it is at least something that would be uplifting. We deserve that. And I don't know if they're getting it wherever they are, so I'll do my best to provide that.
And how about you, Shelby?
For the most part, my correspondence is similar. Occasionally I'll attempt to kind of open the door to that conversation. Then when I see that neither of them are interested in walking through that door, I will pivot to talking about funny stories about Rupert and frustrations at my inability of getting published because a sanitized account of these events no one's interested in. But Jackson, I do talk to him as much, because while Rupert is teaching Arturo how to speak English and how Arturo is teaching him to speak Spanish, and as we travel back and as I'm trying to get published, one thing I'm not showing anyone is that I need to understand what happened. And Jackson is the only person who seems like he wants to talk to me about it.
This is true. While many of your correspondences act in a kind of a circular fashion, as in a letter goes from Shelby to Felix, Felix sends a letter on to Madeline, including Shelby's letter. Madeline then sends both of those on to Shelby, so that you're basically all kept in the loop. Your correspondences with Jackson are rarely so holistic. They don't address everybody. The way he treats each of you is different, distinct. He does stay in touch with Rupert as well, to his credit. He writes to each of you in his own way, addressing each of you as individuals. And it's to you, Shelby, that he is most keenly verbose on the subject of the cult, the pyramid, what it contained, his theories. And for that, everyone else got a plus 25%. I'm going to give you plus 20 in occult. But yes, you receive regular correspondence, Shelby. Jackson's latest letter to you talks about his book, The Hungry Dead, which he was discussing with Madeline briefly. It's now been published. It ultimately prefaces a book that arrives in your home back in England. You have one. It's personally inscribed from Jackson Elias to you. And it is a pretty extensive summary of your adventure, exposing the modern-day survival of a Peruvian and Bolivian death cult from the time of the conquistadors. And while you spend the time reading it and note that it omits many of the weird details, and indeed changes the names of the people that travelled with him, he presents the cult of the Caricere as a purely human evil. Much as he was saying to Madeline before, it's clear enough to someone like yourself where the truth lies and what has been invented to be more palatable to a more skeptical audience. But this is a trove of information. And in the letter that accompanies that book, he explains, I think I found another one. Another group that I'm going to be delving into. I'll let you know when I have information worth reporting. But this could be the big one. Stay in touch, Jackson Elias.
I will, and I will read the book and feel that unique experience amongst writers where I simultaneously am very proud of a friend of mine for writing so well and furious that he's better than me.
You know, there are many occasions where Jackson has written to you, telegraphed or the like, to suggest that you get in touch with his publisher at Prospero House, but Shelby, what is it? Is it arrogance? No, it's not arrogance. Is it... What is it that makes you not take up his offer? Does it feel a bit too much like pity, maybe?
No, not pity. It's more the fact that I know my genre fiction is the only thing it tends to get published, and there's a part of me that still hears my older brother's voice in the back of my head talking about how I should stop focusing on that silly stuff and do something serious with my life. I should stop thinking about pirates and naval adventures and mysteries and focus on something that matters. And even though this is an important, possibly world-shattering conspiracy of horrible events, to be known as someone who just writes this gothic horror, I still haven't come to accept that as serious, even though my friend is clearly very successful at it. So I'm still trying to find my way. I'm still trying to rewrite my own experiences into something closer to a travel log, which is not getting much interest because unfortunately it's so sanitized that it reads as if it's lifeless.
It's to your surprise, Shelby, when you receive a call that there is a visitor at your house from America. Out of interest, Shelby, what kind of... you're not by any means moneyed, looking at your credit rating. So you don't have a housekeeper. You don't have a housekeeper, it's your landlord, who you live above, essentially. You have the flat above his house. He shouts up the stairs, "Visitor for you, Mr. Shattuck. An American."
Thank you, I'll be right down. I will make my way downstairs, not expecting an American.
Standing on the doorstep in the rain, your landlord hasn't invited him, because you know landlords, is a short, squat white man. He has a balding pate framed by uncontrollable curls of greying red hair. It's not a good look. He wears pince-nez glasses, so they're just balanced on the bridge of his nose. And while his frame is undoubtedly bulbous, his clothes are well tailored. He would look good if he wasn't being drenched by the rain. And when he sees you, he smiles, showing a mouth full of teeth, and puts his hand out. "Shelby Shattuck, I presume?"
Yes, and you are?
"Jonah Kensington. Thank you so much for inviting me."
Yes, please come on in. Can I ask, I'm surprised to see an American here in town. What brings you here?
Surprised? Jackson didn't tell you.
Oh, I didn't realize you were friends of Jackson's.
He made me travel across the Atlantic to see you. He told me that you had Now let's get inside, out of the rain.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. My apologies. I can make you a cup of tea or a coffee?
Oh, coffee, please. Maybe late, but I don't sleep much anyway.
Fair enough. I invite him up into my flat. Make him a cup of coffee.
He looks around as he's walking up the creaky staircase. Nice, intimate, mood setting. I could see how a horror novelist could live in a place like this.
Horror novelist?
Well, he takes his coat off, puts his hat on the stand, sits down, pulling his trouser legs up a little. Well... no milk, please, in the coffee. Just black as full eclipse at midnight.
Fair enough. 1 moment. Let's kettle have to heat up.
Well, at which point he goes on to tell you that it seems that your good friend Jackson Elias has basically sent his publisher his editor, Jonah Kensington, all the way across the world to meet with you, having told Kensington that you are the next big author, that in all manner of genres, not only is he a master of fiction, this is how Jackson has described you, he came with me on my journey to Peru and has assembled the most colourful travelogue of ideas that could easily present it as a tourist guide for anyone aiming to venture to Lima or into the wilderness of the Andes. And Jonah Kensington is describing all of this quite vividly, maybe even more vividly than you've written it. But it's clear that Jackson has upsold you, and if you're not going to go to a publisher, he's going to send the publisher to you.
As Kensington's explaining all of this stuff, I just feel my face flushing. I'm embarrassed. I'm awed. I'm more than a little terrified. And then eventually I will unearth some of my manuscripts. At first, I will go for the travel log, but if prompted, and it sounds like I will be, eventually some of the genre stuff as well.
He spends many hours in your flat poring through them. Sometimes he will point out issues or where things could be reworked, but he never oversteps. He's not trying to tell you how to do your job. Rather, he's saying, this is what sells. This is what customers like to see. It would be wonderful if we put a bit of a romance plot in here, but only if you're comfortable with that. And so on. He treats you with respect, probably more respect than any British publishing house has. And by the end of your meeting, you can easily say you're feeling optimistic. Felix. Over the next year, you and Hugo build up something of a rapport, it's fair to say. Old sins have been forgot, and as mentioned, you do sterling work. It's when you're in Rio de Janeiro, so you've travelled pretty far south now, working for a private industrial enterprise. It's a simple security job. It should be beneath your talents, but you're escorting some very high-profile executives across the city to meet with some ministers of state. You don't know the details. The business side isn't your business. But apparently there's some civilians who are very hot under the collar about land being appropriated and people not being paid fairly, this company not paying taxes, that kind of thing. The usual farrago of shit. That you see a familiar figure in the crowd, because there's a mob following you. And at first, you don't want to believe it when you see his face. His eyes glaring at you, burning holes into you. It's Luis de Mendoza. You're sure of it. You are sure of it. He didn't look healthy when you saw him last. Not with his head half missing. Well, his head is intact, but he looks drawn, wan, thin, unwell. And he is there, his teeth are bared, and you can see those teeth are jagged, pointed. He's not opening his mouth wide, but you've seen that mouth open wide before, the rows upon rows of jagged bones in there. His eyes, though, those are the part of him that you recognise the most as he seethes. A good 5 rows of people between him and you, but somehow he stands out. That ancient conquistador. Why is he not dead?
He should be. I mean, what I did to him, there should be no way that he's still here, but then again, the body had disappeared. And given what I've seen, I suppose there are things that can't survive what I did to him. But what to do now? I mean, I have a job to do here.
Felix, we need to move.
Yeah.
Hugo pats you on the shoulder. We're losing the client.
You could just... 1 minute. Is that... Do you recognize the man over there? Is that Luis de Mendoza?
He looks into the crowd. Usually what you're looking for are people with weapons. And this isn't one of those scenes where he looks out and says, no, there's no one there. He looks out and his eyes do that widening thing again. Yeah, that does look like de Mendoza. Look, we need to keep up with our client, Felix.
Hugo, can you cover for me? I just need to make sure that this is taken care of. Alright? Trust me. I'll be right back.
He nods. You can see the expression on his face is, do not take too long. This is a high-profile client.
Don't I know it? No, I have to be right back, but I have to find out if it's really him. Because if it is really him and he is seeing me here, well, I'm not going to be able to go to sleep in that case. I have my weapon with me. I'm on the job after all. And I'll begin moving towards the Mendoza. I don't care if he sees me. In some ways, it would be better if he does. It would be better if we'd be in front of people, because then he wouldn't be able to do what I know he can do.
His scowl turns into a smile as you push through the crowd and come closer to him. His eyes are still hard and uncaring, filled with hate, but his mouth is, to the contrary, now grinning.
Senor de Mendoza, I didn't expect to ever see you again.
Senor Bauer, I have been looking for you.
That's strange. Why would you be looking for me?
And he leans in and he stinks of the grave.
You put a hole in my head.
I did. How are you back?
At first I thought that you were running from me every time I reached a new town or city you had moved on. I was sure that you had picked up my scent. But now I realize you are just running because that's all you know how to do. You are a creature in flight, running away from your fate. You should have died at that pyramid. You should have died with my people. You should have died in your war. And you will not die. Well, Felix Bauer, I will not die. Not until you are gone. Not until you are in the ground. Do you take me for a lying man?
No, I trust that you know exactly what you're saying. We have to put an end to this. There's no way to live to be hunted.
At which point, his head cocks dramatically to the side, as if his neck breaks. It's a snapping movement, like he's heard something in the far-off distance.
Later, yes, later.
And he runs away from you.
Wait. And I look back towards where Hugo disappeared with the client and...
Make a luck roll.
That's a 71 over 64.
You hear a gunshot. It's not in the direction of de Mendoza. It's in the direction of your client.
Verdammt. And I rush towards the client and, fearing the worst, I have my gun out. I've failed.
Fearing the worst is right. You took your eye off the ball, you succumbed to distraction, but how could you not? That killer, that murderer, that monster. But so many people, masses, there was no way that Hugo was going to be able to surveil every single one of them to see if one of them had a pistol in their pocket or tucked away in their coat. All he could do was keep his eye on, well, one side of the mob. There's screaming, people scatter, stampede. And it's some time after this, Felix, while you're back in your hotel room. You're no longer in Rio de Janeiro. For understandable reasons, your contract is cancelled. Hugo went unhurt, but one of your clients, an executive at a massive oil firm, could not be said to be as lucky. You are without payment. It's there that you, now feeling guilty for yet another death. Not just you, but also Meline, now back in New York and Harlem, and Shelby, in England after the meeting with the publisher, receive a telegram. It's sent via the Worldwide Telegraph Service, uniform for each of you wherever you are in the world. Have information concerning Carlisle expedition. Stop. Need reliable investigative team. Stop. Meet January 15, New York. Stop. Jackson Elias. It would appear that Jackson needs you. The Carlisle expedition. An expedition you have heard of, one we will delve into in our next session. But this is where our current session ends.
You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we play Masks of Nyarlathotep for Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. Joining us as our keeper is none other than our dear friend Matthew Dawkins, and we were also joined by Bridgett Jeffries and Eddy Webb. The music was made by Aegersonus and Halgrath, and we've also used Cryochamber's Lovecraftian compilation albums. All of this with the permission of Cryochamber. Check out their website at cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for some moody dark ambient for your gaming table. We would like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon: Martin Heuschober, Simon Cooper, Julia, Camilla, Bob Lange, Cameron, Graham Barey, Doug Thomson, Lily, Maciej, Black Templar, Dennis Sadecki, and Leonhardt for their generous support. You would of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, this show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to bonus campaigns for Cult of Divinity Lost, Call of Cthulhu, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and Warhammer 40k Imperium Maledictum there. And you can also get early and raw access to all of our recordings, and hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as even play some Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. Thank you again for listening, and remember, I am the last. I will tell the Audient Void.